sports. You say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walz brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or...
We were getting scary close to people justifying totalitarian measures.
I think we need to push back on this.
Tim Walz in the campaign trail was literally saying free speech doesn't include hate speech and misinformation.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hey man, you. Because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago, it's on the front page of the New York Times now.
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk didn't just challenge Tim Walz, they dismantled his talking points with precision. It wasn't a debate. It was a surgical takedown driven by facts, sharp wit, and zero tolerance for political fluff. While Walz came, armed with tired slogans, Rogan and Kirk countered with logic that hit like hammers. By the end, the noise was gone, replaced by silence and the crashing sound of collapsing narratives. The outcome was clear. Walz got steamrolled.
You have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. There has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power.
The New York Times just printed a thing. Turns out we were lied to.
They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
Yeah, you lied to us.
The most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy, well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not able to.
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk aren't exactly known for subtlety when calling out political nonsense. And when they set their sights on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, it's like watching two expert mechanics dismantle a faulty machine live on stage. Rogan swings in with the hammer of common sense and real-world experience, while Kirk applies the chisel of sharp facts and relentless logic. Together, they reduce Walz's political record to a cautionary tale exposed, deconstructed, and laid bare in real time.
Did you say you could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked their ass and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they were threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools, you're
Joe Rogan tackles it like someone who's seen too many Smoke Candemire acts to be fooled. He's unmoved by appearances or rehearsed speeches. What matters to him are results, consequences, and reality over illusion. And with Tim Walz, illusion is the core issue. Rogan breaks down Walz's governing style like he's dissecting a strange conspiracy theory, one so unbelievable it's hard to imagine how it ever got voted into office in the first place.
This video of Tim Walz doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing, and he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy things have gotten. Like,
It's cool.
He sees a leader fixated on image, obsessed with how things look rather than how they truly affect people. Joe Rogan starts by laughing at the absurdity of Tim Walz's pandemic performance. While Rogan has spent countless hours speaking with doctors, scientists, and everyday people, Walz acted as if the crisis were a stage play, more interested in theatrics than substance. To Rogan, Walz seemed less like a public servant and more like an actor auditioning for the role of emergency manager in a political drama.
in that video?
No.
This is what people love about Donald Trump. The fact that he would say this.
But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have period, but then I met Tim Walz.
Minnesota became a bizarre case study in double standards. Gyms were shuttered while big box stores stayed wide open. Joe Rogan tears into the logic behind this with his signature curiosity and sharp wit. How, he asks, does a virus supposedly avoid the brightly lit aisles of major retail chains but strike with vengeance in barbershops and small diners? It's laughable, and Joe treats it as such. He goes even deeper into Governor Walz's puzzling obsession with control, mocking how the governor clung to emergency powers like a toddler who just discovered the TV remote. There was no flexibility, no nuance, just a rigid, fear-fueled rulebook that left no space for common sense. Joe compares Walz's leadership to that of a weatherman locked in a basement, calling out hurricanes with no windows to see the real storm. And the more outrageous the mandates became, the harder Walz clung to them, doubling down on every decree as if he were trapped in a sci-fi film of his own making. But Rogan doesn't stop at mockery. He dives deep, contrasting Walz's fantasy rule with the painful reality on the ground: businesses shut down, lives appended, and dreams that never reopened.
He was 100% right with Tim Walz.
I know I'm doing something right when the Fox News crowd is all pitching at me like crazy. Like, I'm loving it.
That guy was almost the vice president of the United States.
Elon Musk was crying last week. Tim is being mean to me, basically, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, I need a vice.
The family was torn apart by chaos and confusion, caught in a whirlwind of health directives that seemed to contradict themselves weekly. Joe Rogan lays it all out like a puzzle, except the pieces are from different boxes and, somehow, Governor Walz insists it still forms a beautiful picture. Then Charlie Kirk enters the scene, sleeves rolled up and a thick stack of receipts in hand. Where Joe leans into street-level wisdom and humor, Charlie delivers the sharpness of political combat. He isn't here for laughs, he's here for the takedown. Charlie steps up like a seasoned prosecutor, laying out a damning case against a defendant who has already confessed through sheer incompetence. He opens fire on Walz's economic policies, rather, the glaring lack of them. Under Walz, Minnesota became a testing ground for how fast investment could be scared out of a state. Charlie paints a grim picture of a governor who sees businesses not as the engine of a thriving society, but as obstacles. While other states reopened and rebuilt, Walz issued press statements on equity and climate justice. Meanwhile, Minnesota's small business owners were left fighting for survival, something Charlie finds both laughable and tragic.
Tim Walz, cocksucker, if that guy got into power, like if Kamala died and Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, was our fucking president, you know how crazy this country would be? That weirdo who puts tampons in the boys' room, and what about our joy? Like, he's a complete pathological liar. Like a complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square, lied about being a fucking...
Charlie Kirk calls it leadership by press release, a style where the only things growing are government spending and public confusion. Then he dives into Walz's handling of crime, treating it like a dark comedy that refuses to end. Under Governor Walz, Minnesota's cities began to feel like they were being run by someone who learned law enforcement strategy from internet memes. Crime surged, police morale collapsed, and the streets turned into test sites for progressive policies that failed in real time. Through it all, Walz delivered polished speeches about unity, even as he acted like law enforcement was a luxury item, rather than a foundational pillar of a functioning state. Charlie pulls no punches in describing Walz's response to the George Floyd riots. Rather than lead, Walz hesitated. Rather than stand firm, he stepped back. Charlie captures the moment with scathing precision, comparing Walz to a man holding a fire extinguisher but too busy reading the instructions to use it. According to Charlie, Walz's decision-making wasn't just weak, it was outright dangerous. He calls it the leadership style of a substitute teacher who walked into chaos with a guitar in a dream instead of a real plan.
When they decided that J.D. Vance was weird. Yeah. Remember that one?
And then they just weirds everywhere.
Weird. Oh, you don't want a weird guy. Meanwhile, you have Tim Walz is your VP.
Weird.
You don't think that guy's weird? He's weird in every way. The way he walks, the way he waves his hands.
Yeah, he reminds me of the clown emoji.
He's a bizarre guy.
He's a strange dude.
I just don't understand why they made that choice.
Yeah, it gives the creeps.
I just don't understand why they made that choice. There's a lot of other people that are qualified. I don't know why. I read that Kamala Harris made that decision when
Charlie dives into education, spotlighting the alarming decline in Minnesota schools under Governor Tim Walz. He highlights how standardized test scores in reading and math have plummeted, while classroom ideology has soared. Instead of focusing on core academics, Charlie says, the administration responded by hiring more diversity officers and rolling out privilege awareness workshops, effectively replacing textbooks with activism journals. According to Charlie, schools under Walz became places where kids learned everything except the basics, and the only thing multiplying was the bureaucracy. Joe Rogan jumps back in, mocking Walz's leadership style by comparing it to a low-budget survival movie where the main character keeps missing obvious escape routes. Walz is the kind of guy, Rogan says, who'd spend 10 minutes drafting a safety protocol email while someone bleeds out at the bottom of the stairs. For Joe, it's all about the disconnect between messaging and mission. Politicians like Walz prioritize appearances over action. Rogan then shifts to the cultural fallout. He argues that leaders like Walz are so consumed by the need to impress Twitter activists and elite circles that they forget the real people they're supposed to serve. The result, a government stuck in performance mode, not problem solving.
Bring in her, and they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota. That's the vice president, who He believes a lot of wild things. One of them is transgender surgery for people who are under 13. Another one is abortion up until 9 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like a Somali flag. That stuff scares the
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk continue their takedown of Governor Tim Walz, exposing what they see as a leadership style more suited for social media than public service. Rogan points out that Walz seems more interested in trending online than tackling Minnesota's real issues. He argues that leaders like Walz aren't concerned with real conversations or data. They just want applause from the echo chambers that already agree with them. Charlie Kirk lands the final blow, saying, Walz is the perfect example of what happens when a governor tries to run a state like a graduate seminar. It's all theory, no practice, all talk, no traction. Minnesota, Charlie insists, isn't a TED Talk. It's a real place with real people. Yet Walz treated it like an experimental playground for elite academic theories that collapse the moment they face reality. Together, Joe and Charlie don't just criticize Walz, they completely dismantle him. Joe's commentary is laced with biting humor and vivid analogies, while Charlie comes armed with data-driven arguments and razor-sharp logic. Their tag team approach exposes Walz as a man who speaks like a reformer but governs like someone who won a raffle to lead a state for a week. What makes their roast sting is its brutal, undeniable truth.
With Newsom, why don't you throw the pigskin with Walz? What do you say?
I think it's a great idea. I'll fly on up to Minneapolis. We'll see what it's all about, Governor Walz. You're Mr. Coach. You're the one that can motivate.
Tim Walz built his career on slogans, smiles, and media-friendly passivity, but under the spotlight of Joe Rogan's scrutiny and the weight of Charlie Kirk's logic. That carefully curated image crumbles. There's no need for shouting or two men with microphones, sharp minds, and zero tolerance for politicians who mistake emotional optics for real-world results. They don't just roast Walz, they turn his entire political playbook into a cautionary tale in open museum of failed ideas. And the entry is free, funny, and brutally honest. Charlie Kirk isn't done. He leans back in, turning his focus to Walz's strange fixation on building a perfect society through government micromanagement. It's like he read a utopia novel and mistook it for a policy guide. Charlie says, every issue becomes a social experiment, every problem a reason to form another committee. Meanwhile, nothing gets solved. Charlie argues that Walz governs with the belief that the government knows best, better than parents, better than business owners, better than law enforcement. It's a top-down approach fueled by ideology rather than results. And under that philosophy, Minnesota becomes less a state and more a testing lab for disconnected elite ideas.
I think it would be very similar to Barack Obama throwing a baseball. I don't think it would be a sight that would be easy on the eyes. It's right, I could throw quite a tight spiral. Hey, Governor Walz, let's go have a game of catch. We'll see how you do.
Charlie Kirk delivers one of his sharpest insights yet. The real danger with Tim Walz is that he believes he's smarter than reality itself. That's where Walz truly excels in failure. Charlie says, because once a politician thinks they're the smartest person in every room, they stop listening. And when they stop listening, they lose the plot. Joe Rogan jumps in seamlessly, shifting focus to Walz's uncanny ability to spin every mistake into some grand strategy. Joe compares it to a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat only to claim it was supposed to be a porcupine all along. Walz's speeches, Joe says, are packed with upbeat, empty phrases that sound like someone reading off motivational posters while chaos unfolds in the background. More importantly, Rogan points out, Walz is never ahead of the problem. He's reactive, not proactive. He doesn't lead through crisis, he shows up after the damage is done, acting like he just stumbled upon the wreckage. Joe nails the absurdity. It's like watching a guy smash a window and then deliver a speech on how we all need to be more careful with glass. It's not just tone deaf, it's exhausting. And to Joe and Charlie, it's the definition of failed leadership.
Just weird and how avoidable it was.
100% avoidable, but pathological liars, people that are habitual liars, they just lie all the time about everything.
Charlie zeroes in on Tim Walz's refusal to take responsibility, calling him a master of blame deflection. The man has a degree in avoiding accountability. Charlie says, whenever something goes wrong, Walz points fingers at the federal government, local officials, climate change, or even Mercury in retrograde, anyone but himself. Charlie jokes that if Walz tripped over his own shoelaces, he'd blame the shoe industry and call for a statewide review of walking. To Walz, accountability is just a buzzword, used for press conferences, not actual leadership. Joe Rogan jumps in, criticizing the massive disconnect between Walz and the people he's supposed to serve. There's no empathy, no grasp of what Minnesotans truly experience. Everything is filtered through advisors, headlines, and social media trends. Joe compares it to trying to run a farm using Yelp. Reviews, everything looks polished from the outside, But behind the scenes, it's chaos and the cows are missing. Charlie ends with a brutal, cutting summary.
Cognitive decline problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb.
Biden and Biden saying I need a vice president dumber than me.
Kamala Harris may be the dumbest person ever elected vice president in American history.
Kamala saying I need a vice president dumber than me. And it's Walz. Men have tampons.
We have a lot of accomplishment. We haven't taken adequate credit for it, frankly. We got to do a better job of getting the word out about what we have accomplished and who did it.
You got to lose because we got to break this up.
Tim Walz is the governor of press conferences, not people more focused on crafting narratives than delivering results. His talent lies in turning political failure into soft-spoken disappointment, as if whispering bad news softens the blow. But no polished phrasing can cover up the damage. Once proud and functional, Minnesota has become the backdrop for Walz's ongoing seminar in Rogan and Kirk don't just roast him, they conduct a full political autopsy. The cause of death, too much control, too little awareness, and a leader who confused holding power with making progress. The result is a state lost in optics, not outcomes.